On a scorching afternoon, a young black delivery teenager pedals through the cracked streets, racing to deliver groceries that will feed his struggling family. But as he turns down a quiet block, he spots an elderly white woman on her porch, struggling to lift a board before it collapses. Without hesitation, he drops everything to save her, knowing he might lose the only job keeping them alive. He doesn't know she's the mother of a powerful CEO, and that his kindness will soon change everything. Before we go back, tell us where you're watching from, because what happens next will warm your heart in ways you never expected. The sun hadn't even reached its highest point, but already Memphis was sweltering in a heat that wrapped around the city like a damp wool blanket. The air clung thick with tar and dry earth, slowing everything to a crawl. Malik Jefferson wiped the back of his neck with the hem of his shirt as he coasted down Peabody Avenue, his knees pumping steadily at the pedals of his scuffed-up Schwinn. The crate strapped to the rear frame bounced with every pothole. Inside were 2 grocery orders, paper bags filled with discount cereal, frozen chicken, and off-brand shampoo, all bought by folks too tired or too old to make it to the store. It wasn't glamorous work, but it kept the lights on. He was cutting it close. The app on his phone had buzzed 3 times now, warning him his delivery window was closing. Another late trip and his rating would drop again. Fewer orders meant fewer tips, and that meant Mama would have to skip another lunch so his little sister could eat. He clenched his jaw. Not today. Most boys his age were at the park or glued to their phones, but Malik didn't mind trading free time for a few extra dollars. He studied hard, finished his homework early every night, then picked up evening deliveries so his mother wouldn't have to carry the whole load alone. He checked the timer. 8 minutes left. If he stayed moving, he'd make it. Then, as he turned onto a quieter block, a line of weathered porches and drooping magnolia trees, he saw her. An elderly woman stood on a sagging porch, trying to lift a long wooden plank onto a sawhorse. The board was easily 10 feet long, too much for her small frame. She struggled to balance it, her arms shaking. Malik slowed, his brow furrowed. The board slipped once, then again. "Ma'am," he called, dropping his bike and hurrying across the yard. The plank started to fall. Malik caught it mid-air before it slammed into her legs, the weight driving into his shoulder. He grunted, steadying it against the grass. The woman exhaled hard, clutching the porch rail. "Good Lord, I thought that was it for me." "Yes, ma'am. Are you all right?" Malik asked, catching his breath. She nodded, her face pale beneath the wide straw hat. "I'll live." He leaned the board against the railing, noticing how worn the wood was. Nails stuck out where the porch boards had split. The steps were warped, one corner sagging low enough that the plank could have slid right through it. "You working on this alone, ma'am?" he asked. She gave a small laugh. "Been trying to. This old porch is about ready to give up on me." Malik smiled faintly. "You deliver groceries?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," he said, nodding toward his bike. "Or at least I'm supposed to." He checked his phone. 4 minutes left. Still a chance. "Thank you for helping," she said, adjusting her hat. "I'll manage the rest." "Yes, ma'am." Malik nodded and started back toward his bike, but as he reached the curb, he heard a soft creak, then saw one of the loose boards shift beneath her weight. A long nail poked upward, catching the sunlight. One wrong step and she'd go down hard. He hesitated, then turned back. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, walking up the steps again. "That post there, it's loose. If you lean on it, you could fall." She blinked, surprised. "This one?" "Yes, ma'am." He tapped the wobbling post. The base moved with every breath of wind. It split clean through. He checked his phone again. The screen flashed red. Even if he left right now, he'd be late. He slipped the phone into his pocket. "Well, if I'm already late, I might as well fix it right." She frowned slightly. "You sure about that?" "Yes, ma'am. Won't take long," he said softly, crouching to grab the loose hammer. He'd noticed the small mailbox by the steps. D. Hayes, written in faded paint. "Mind if I try, Mrs. Hayes?" he asked politely. She smiled faintly. "You know what you're doing." "Enough to keep it standing another week," Malik said with a small grin. He pressed the split boards together and drove a few nails in, one by one. The sharp sound echoed in the heavy air. Sweat rolled down his arms as he worked, but soon the post held firm again. He tested it. There you go, ma'am. Should hold better now. She smiled, a slow, weary smile. Well, that's something. Yes, ma'am, Malik said, wiping his forehead. He noticed the rest of the boards scattered across the yard, some with nails still sticking out. He bent down to gather them. Son, you don't need to. It's okay, ma'am, he said gently. I'm already late anyway. Might as well make sure you don't trip on these. The app had already marked him late. She watched him quietly, then said, That's very kind of you. Malik shook his head. No, ma'am, just doing what I'd hoped someone would do for my mama. The next while passed under the unforgiving sun. Malik stacked the rest of the boards, cleared debris from the steps, and tightened a few loose nails along the railing. She gave soft instructions, sometimes pausing to rest her hand on a post. Sweat soaked through Malik's shirt, but he didn't stop until the porch looked safe again. When they finished, the woman extended a weathered hand. Dorothy Hayes, she said, and you'd be Malik Jefferson, ma'am. Dorothy smiled, slow and genuine. If you ever need anything, Malik, you come knock. This porch might not look like much, but it owes you. Yes, ma'am, he said, smiling shyly. Malik mounted his bike, legs heavy from the heat. He gave one last glance at Mrs. Hayes, sitting quietly on her newly secured steps before pedaling away. By the time he reached the last delivery, the sky had turned the color of weak lemonade. He didn't bother checking the time. The app would mark him late no matter what. He knew he wouldn't get paid, maybe even lose his account, but he still finished the route. Someone out there might be counting on those groceries the way his own family did. When the last bag was handed off, he stood in the fading light, shirt clinging to his back, arms aching. The customer murmured a distracted thank you before closing the door. That was fine. Malik wasn't looking for thanks, he just wanted to make it home. Malik's legs felt like soaked concrete as he pushed his bike up the cracked sidewalk toward the narrow brick house he called home. The late afternoon heat had taken on a drier bite, and the sky hung low and yellow with humidity, threatening storms that might never come. He could feel the sting in his shoulders from lifting boards and the dull ache in his palms where splinters still itched beneath the skin. His t-shirt clung to his back, damp and stained with sweat and dust. The crate on his bike was empty now. Every bag delivered, but the silence from his phone told him enough. The app had stopped buzzing hours ago. When he finally checked it at a red light, the screen showed a single message: account performance under review. Possible suspension. He didn't react, he just stared at it until the light changed. Now, as he reached the small brick steps of his house, the weight of the day settled over him all at once. The air smelled faintly of fried oil from the neighbor's kitchen, and someone's old radio played a gospel tune too slow to lift anyone's mood. Malik leaned the bike against the porch railing, and stood there for a moment, head bowed. His palms were raw, his shirt stiff with dried sweat, his throat dry as paper. He rubbed his face with both hands, took a slow breath, and finally opened the door. Inside, he heard Imani's laughter, soft and tired, the kind that only came out on good days, and his mother's faint voice calling from the kitchen. Malik, Rose Jefferson peeked out from the doorway, apron smudged, a worn rag slung over her shoulder. Her eyes swept over him, reading everything without a word. "You're late, baby. I was startin' to worry." "Yes, ma'am," Malik said quietly, setting his bike by the door so it wouldn't scratch the wall. "I'm sorry, got held up a little." Rose stepped closer, concern softening into that practical look she always wore when the bills were tight. "Held up how?" He hesitated, glancing toward the kitchen table where unopened envelopes sat like quiet reminders. "One of the orders took longer than I thought." "Nothin' big." Her brow furrowed. "And the tips?" He looked down. "Didn't make it that far, Ma." For a moment, the house went still. Not angry still, just the kind of silence that came from being tired for too long. Rose sighed through her nose and wiped her hands on the rag. "Well," she said softly, "we'll figure it out. We always do." From the hallway came a burst of footsteps. Imani appeared, her braids bouncing, her face glowing when she saw him. "Malik," she squealed, throwing her arms around his waist. He crouched down, catching her in a hug. "Hey, squirt," he said with a tired grin. You helped Mama today. I did. I swept the kitchen and folded towels, even the big ones. Malik chuckled. That's so. Sounds like you're trying to take my job. Imani giggled and dashed back to the kitchen, her laughter echoing down the hall. Rose leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, her expression softer now. You wanna tell me what really happened out there? Malik hesitated. There was this old lady, he said finally. Her porch was fallen apart. She was trying to move a big board by herself. Almost got hurt real bad. I couldn't just ride off. Rose's eyebrows lifted slightly. I stayed a bit, helped her fix some of it, he added, almost apologetically. I know I missed my delivery window. I know I probably messed things up, but Rose just stood there for a moment, quiet still, then stepped forward and placed a hand on his cheek. You did right, baby, she said softly. Malik blinked, unsure if he'd heard her right. You hear me, she said again, firmer this time. You did right. This world don't always pay you for doing good, but that don't make it wrong. Her thumb brushed a streak of dust off his jaw before she turned back to the stove. Now come eat before it gets cold. Beans taste better when they're hot. Yes, ma'am, Malik said quietly. He sat at the little table, the smell of rice and beans filling the room. His stomach growled, but his mind was somewhere else, back on that porch, back to the old woman's trembling smile. He'd lost a day's pay, maybe more, but even as the worry pressed in, another voice echoed louder. This porch might not look like much, but it owes you. That night, lying on the worn couch mattress in the front room, Malik stared at the ceiling, his thoughts moving like smoke. He should have felt regret. He should have felt panic about the money, but what he felt instead was a strange quiet clarity. He had done something good, something decent, and even if it didn't matter to the world, it mattered to him. And though he didn't know it yet, it mattered to someone else, too. Miles away in that old house shaded by the big magnolia tree, an elderly woman sat on her newly cleared porch with a cordless phone in her hand. She stared at it for a long moment, then dialed a number she hadn't called in months. Rachel, she said when her daughter answered, her voice gravelly but warm. I know it's late, honey, but I need to tell you about something that happened today, about a young man. The next morning, Malik woke to the dull buzz of his phone. The delivery app had made its decision. His account was officially suspended. No apology, no explanation, just a polite message reminding him that kindness didn't fit neatly into a schedule. He sat on the edge of the couch for a long moment, staring at the screen. The words stung a little, but not in the way he expected. There was no anger, no regret, only a quiet acceptance. He'd known this might happen the moment he stopped to help that woman. And still, if he could go back, he would have done it again. If the world didn't reward kindness, then he'd just find another way to make it work. But living still meant paying bills. So by noon, Malik was out again, going door to door around the neighborhood, asking quietly if anyone needed help. He mowed lawns, hauled trash, scrubbed a porch for an older man down the block. The work was rough, and the pay small, but it was something. When he got home that evening, his hands were blistered and his shirt soaked through. His mother looked up from the kitchen sink and asked softly, "Long day, baby?" "Yes, ma," he said with a tired smile. "But a good one." Rose didn't press. She just nodded, wiped her hands and said, "Wash up, supper's almost ready." That night, Malik counted out his crumpled earnings, $28 and some change, and tucked it carefully into the cookie tin on the counter. It wasn't much, but it kept the lights on one more week. And still, as he lay down on the couch later, muscles sore and eyelids heavy, a quiet peace lingered inside him. He hadn't lost anything that truly mattered. If anything, he'd gained something he couldn't name yet. The next few days passed in a fog of uncertainty for Malik. The app suspended his account pending review, standard procedure, they said, for multiple missed deliveries. He spent his time doing odd jobs around the neighborhood, mowing lawns, hauling trash, anything that brought in a few dollars. Rose picked up extra shifts at the diner where she worked part-time, coming home late but always humming under her breath, as if reminding herself there was still something to sing about. Imani, oblivious to the tension, drew pictures at the kitchen table, and practiced her reading with books from the library's free bin. He passed by Dorothy's house again a few days later. She was out on the porch, wrestling with a bag of soil twice her size. Malik slowed just enough to watch her struggle before calling out, "You sure that bag's not winning?" Dorothy laughed and waved him over. He carried it inside for her, and before he knew it, she was handing him a glass of lemonade and talking about her garden. After that, it became a habit. Sometimes he'd say he was heading that way anyway. Even when he wasn't, he'd spot a loose shutter or an empty bird feeder and offer to fix it while he was there. Other times, he'd just check in under the pretense of passing by, but really because he'd noticed she didn't seem to have anyone else around. At first it was simple things: carrying in groceries, tightening a loose hinge, lifting boxes too heavy for her back. She'd thank him with lemonade or a slice of pound cake, and he'd stay long enough to cool off before heading back to his odd jobs. But with each visit, conversation stretched a little longer. Dorothy had a way of talking that made silence feel comfortable. She'd ask about his deliveries, his sister, his mother's health. Malik didn't say much at first, but she listened the way few people did, without judgment, without rushing him. By the fourth day, he'd stopped pretending it was coincidence. He swung by, after finishing his morning work, just to check if she needed anything. That day, the porch looked better in daylight. The boards he'd helped stack were now being cut and fitted by what looked like a professional contractor. Dorothy sat on the steps, supervising, a glass of lemonade in her hand. When she saw him, she smiled and waved. "Malik, come here a minute." He coasted over, braking at the edge of her yard. "Got someone to help you finish?" he asked, nodding toward the contractor. "I did," Dorothy said. "Figured out I'm too old and too stubborn for my own good. But I wouldn't have figured that out if you hadn't shown me I didn't have to do everything alone." Malik looked down, embarrassed. "It was nothing." "It was something," Dorothy said, firm but gentle, "and I told my daughter about it." "About you?" He frowned slightly. "You didn't have to do that, ma'am." "I know, but I wanted to," she smiled. "She runs a logistics company downtown. I told her she should meet you." Malik blinked, unsure what to say. "I appreciate that, but I'm not sure I'm no buts," Dorothy cut in. "You helped me when you had every reason not to, when it cost you something real. That's character, Malik Jefferson, and character's rarer than talent." Malik didn't answer. He just nodded, his throat tight. Dorothy's eyes softened. "You take care of yourself, son. And don't be a stranger. This porch is always open to you." As he rode away, Malik felt something warm building in his chest. Not quite hope, not yet, but close enough that it made the heat of the day feel a little lighter. Meanwhile, across town, Rachel Hayes sat in her corner office, staring at the business card she'd been turning over in her fingers for 3 days. On it, written in her mother's shaky handwriting, was a name and an address. Malik Jefferson. Good boy. Real heart. Rachel had listened to her mother tell the story twice, once on the phone that first night, and again when she'd visited 2 days later. Both times, Dorothy had spoken with a conviction Rachel hadn't heard in her voice since before her father died. He didn't want anything, Dorothy had said. Didn't ask for money, didn't wait around for thanks. He just saw someone who needed help and he helped. When's the last time you met someone like that? Rachel couldn't remember. She picked up her phone and dialed her assistant. "Barbara, I need you to do some quiet research for me. There's a young man I want to learn more about before I reach out." A week and a half after Malik had helped Dorothy, 11 days exactly, a quiet Saturday morning arrived with cloud cover and cooler air. Malik was in the backyard, trying to fix a latch on the fence gate, when Rose called from the house. "Malik, someone's here to see you." He wiped his hands on his jeans and walked around front, stopping short when he saw the black town car parked at the curb. A woman in a tailored navy blazer and cream slacks stood on the sidewalk, and beside her, Rose looked simultaneously protective and bewildered. "Malik Jefferson?" the woman asked, extending her hand. "Yes, ma'am. I'm Rachel Hayes, Dorothy's daughter." Recognition dawned. "Is she okay?" "She's fine, better than fine actually." Rachel smiled. She hasn't stopped talking about you since the day you helped her, and when my mother talks, I've learned to listen. Rose stepped closer to Malik, her posture tense. Rachel noticed and softened her approach. Mrs. Jefferson, I'm not here to cause any trouble. I'm here because I think your son did something remarkable, and I'd like to talk to both of you about an opportunity. Would you be willing to give me an hour of your time? Rose looked at Malik, then back at Rachel. What kind of opportunity? The kind that requires a proper conversation, Rachel said. My driver can take us somewhere comfortable, or we can talk here, whatever makes you most at ease. But I promise you, this is worth hearing. 10 minutes later, they were seated in a small coffee shop 3 blocks away. Rachel's choice, neutral territory. She'd bought coffee and pastries, which sat untouched on the table between them. I'm going to be direct, Rachel began. My mother told me what you did, Malik, and I did some checking. I know you're 16. I know you work delivery to help support your family. I know your account was suspended because you chose to help my mother instead of completing your route. Malik's jaw tightened. I made a choice. Exactly, Rachel said. You made a choice, and it was the right one, even though it cost you. She leaned forward. I run a logistics and supply chain company. We move goods all over the region, warehouses, distribution, road optimization. It's not glamorous, but it's stable and it's growing. She slid a folder across the table. I'm starting an apprenticeship program for young people, paid position, part-time, after school. Learn the business from the ground up. It's brand new. You'd be the first participant. Malik opened the folder slowly. Inside was a job description, an hourly rate that was more than he'd ever made, and a schedule that wouldn't interfere with school. Why me? He asked quietly. Because you've already shown me what I need to know, Rachel said. You're reliable when it matters. You think about others. You work hard. Those are the things I can't teach. Everything else, logistics, systems, management, those I can. Rose had been silent, reading over Malik's shoulder. Now she spoke. What's the catch? Rachel met her eyes. No catch, just expectations. He shows up on time. He works hard. He learns. If he does that, the door stays open. If he doesn't, it closes. Fair is fair. Rachel glanced down at the neat notebook Rose had brought with her, its pages filled with penciled notes, grocery tallies, and carefully tracked medical expenses. The handwriting was small and orderly. You keep track of everything, don't you? Rachel asked. Rose blinked, embarrassed. Old habit. You have to, when every dollar matters. Rachel smiled faintly. That's a skill most people don't have. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a second folder. Mrs. Jefferson, I'm also expanding my administrative staff. I could use someone with your kind of life experience. Someone who knows how to make things work with limited resources, who understands people. Front desk coordinator, scheduling, office management, full benefits. Rose's hand went to her chest. You're offering me a job. You don't even know me. I know you raised a son who stops to help strangers when it costs him everything, Rachel said simply, and I can see from those pages you've been running a household on discipline and grace. That's real management. The silence that followed was heavy with possibility. Malik looked at his mother. Rose looked back, her eyes bright with tears she was trying not to shed. There's one more thing, Rachel said carefully. I sit on the board of a scholarship foundation, the Hayes Family Foundation. My father started it before he passed. We help kids from underserved communities access better educational opportunities. She paused. I can't guarantee anything, but if Malik is interested, I can get him an application. The committee makes the final decision, but I can make sure his story is heard. Malik's throat felt tight. I don't understand. Why are you doing all this? Rachel sat back, her expression distant for a moment. When I was 23, fresh out of college, I got laid off from my first real job. I was broke, scared, sleeping on a friend's couch. A woman I barely knew, my father's business partner, gave me a chance. Hired me as an assistant for a project she didn't even need help with, just so I'd have income while I figured things out. She looked directly at Malik. That chance changed my life. It gave me time to breathe, to learn, to become who I am now. I've been looking for ways to pay that forward ever since, and when my mother called and told me about you, I knew this was one of those moments. Rose wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. What if this is too good to be true? Then hold me accountable, Rachel said. Come see the office, meet my staff, ask questions, take a few days to think about it. But I'm not going anywhere, and neither is this offer. She stood and gathered her things. I'm leaving both folders with you. My direct number is inside. When you're ready to talk, call me. At the door she turned back. Malik, you lost income because you chose decency over profit. In my book, that doesn't make you foolish. It makes you exactly the kind of person the world needs more of. I'd be honored to help you build the future you deserve. After she left, Malik and Rose sat in silence, staring at the folders. Finally Rose spoke, her voice shaking. Baby, I think maybe something good is finally happening. Malik looked at his mother, at the lines around her eyes, at her work-worn hands, at the hope flickering in her face like a candle that had been sheltered from the wind. Yeah, Mama, he said softly. I think maybe it is. 3 days later, on a Tuesday afternoon, Malik and Rose stood in front of a modern glass building in downtown Memphis. The Hayes Logistics sign gleamed above the entrance, and through the windows they could see people moving with purpose through clean, bright spaces. Rose had called Rachel the night before, her voice nervous but determined. We'd like to see the office and talk more. Now they were here, and Malik's heart hammered as they pushed through the revolving door. Barbara, the silver-haired receptionist Rachel had mentioned, greeted them warmly. You must be the Jeffersons. Miss Hayes is expecting you. Can I get you some water? Coffee? Water would be nice. Thank you, Rose said quietly. As Barbara led them down the hallway, Malik noticed the photographs on the walls: work crews, community projects, ribbon-cutting ceremonies. One photo showed a much younger Rachel standing next to an older man with kind eyes. The plaque below read Robert Hayes, founder, built with integrity, grown with heart. Rachel met them in a conference room with windows overlooking the city. She wasn't alone. A black man in his late 40s sat beside her, wearing a polo shirt with the Hayes Logistics logo. Malik rose. This is James Patterson. He'd be Malik's direct supervisor if you decide to move forward. Patterson stood and shook their hands, his grip firm but not aggressive. Good to meet you both. Rachel told me about what you did for her mother. That took guts. They spent the next hour talking through details. Patterson explained what the apprenticeship would actually involve: shadowing route coordinators, learning inventory systems, helping with data entry and analysis. It's real work, he said. Not busy work. You'll make mistakes and that's fine. That's how you learn. But you'll also contribute something meaningful. Rachel walked Rose through the administrative position, managing schedules, coordinating between departments, handling client communications. It's the kind of role where organization and people skills matter more than formal credentials, she explained. I think you'd be excellent at it. Rose asked careful questions, probing for hidden requirements, unclear expectations, anything that might make this too good to be true. But the answers were straightforward, the terms clear. Finally, Rachel pulled out a third set of documents. These are scholarship application materials. The foundation accepts applications year-round, but there's a review period that takes about 6 to 8 weeks. You'd need to submit grades, teacher recommendations, a personal essay, and there's an interview. What are the chances? Malik asked. Rachel considered this carefully. Honestly, with your academic record and your story, I'd say strong. But I can't promise anything. The committee is independent. I'm only one vote. She looked at both of them. Here's what I propose. You both start work next week. Part-time for Malik, full-time for Rose. We do a 30-day trial period for all of us. You see if this is the right fit, and we do the same. Meanwhile, Malik works on the scholarship application. If he gets it, great. If not, he's still got a job and a future here. Sound fair? Malik looked at his mother. She looked back, and he saw the calculation in her eyes. The risk weighed against the possibility. It sounds more than fair, Rose said finally. When do we start? Rachel smiled. Monday morning, 8 a.m. Monday arrived with surprising speed. Malik dressed in his best clothes, khakis Rose had found at the thrift store, and a button-down shirt she'd pressed until the creases were sharp enough to cut. He stared at himself in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the person looking back. You look good, baby, Rose said from the doorway. She wore a simple dress and cardigan, her hair pulled back neatly. She looked nervous and excited and terrified all at once. They dropped Imani at school first. She'd asked 100 questions about where they were going, what they'd be doing, whether they'd be home for dinner. "I'll have something special waiting," Rose had promised. The first day was overwhelming. Barbara showed Malik to a small desk in the logistics department, equipped with a computer, a phone, and a stack of training manuals. James Patterson appeared within minutes. "All right, kid, let's start simple. I want you to watch me for the morning, see what I do, how the systems work. Ask questions, lots of them. I'd rather answer 100 stupid questions now than fix one big mistake later." Malik shadowed Patterson through route reviews, inventory checks, and client calls. The terminology was foreign, SKUs and ETAs and container loads, but Patterson explained patiently, never talking down, never making Malik feel small for not knowing. At lunch, Malik ate a sandwich in the break room, watching the easy camaraderie of the staff. A few people introduced themselves, asked where he was from, welcomed him without prying. It felt almost normal, almost, because part of Malik kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for someone to realize he didn't belong here, that he was just a kid from the delivery app, playing dress-up in a world that wasn't his. Meanwhile, 2 floors up, Rose was discovering she was better at this job than she'd thought possible. Years of managing a household on nothing, of juggling bills and schedules and needs, had taught her skills she'd never thought to name. She organized files that had been in chaos for months. She created a color-coded scheduling system that made Barbara laugh with delight. She answered phones with a warmth that made clients feel heard. "You're a natural," Barbara told her at the end of the first day. "I've been doing this for 20 years, and you just streamlined something I've been struggling with for 6 months. Rose felt something she hadn't felt in years, pride in her work, not just survival, but actual accomplishment. That night at dinner, Imani asked them both 1,000 questions. Malik tried to explain logistics, fumbling over the new vocabulary. Rose described her day with an energy that made her daughter's eyes shine. "Are we going to be okay now?" Imani asked, her voice small. Rose reached over and took her hand. "Baby, we're going to be better than okay." The first week passed, then the second. Malik learned the computer systems, started running simple reports, caught his first data entry error before it became a problem. Patterson nodded approvingly. "Good eye." But it wasn't all smooth. There were moments of deep uncertainty. In the 3rd week, Malik was asked to contact a client about a delayed shipment. He stammered through the call, forgot to check a critical detail, and ended up giving incomplete information. The client called back, irritated, and Patterson had to step in to fix it. Afterward, Patterson called Malik into a small office. Malik's stomach dropped. "This is it. This is where they tell me I'm not cut out for this." But Patterson just leaned back in his chair and said, "Tell me what happened." Malik explained, his voice shaking. "I froze. I didn't know what to say, and I messed up." "Yeah, you did," Patterson agreed. "Now tell me what you learned." Malik blinked. "What I learned, mistakes are only useless if you don't learn from them. So what would you do differently next time?" Malik thought about it. I'd check the route details before I picked up the phone, and I'd write down the key points so I wouldn't forget." Patterson nodded. "Good, do that. And Malik, you're going to mess up again. Probably next week, probably next month. That's part of this. What matters is whether you learn and keep going." It was the first time Malik realized that maybe this place was different, that maybe mistakes weren't the end of the world. By the end of the 30-day trial period, both Malik and Rose had proven themselves. Rachel called them into her office together. "You've both exceeded expectations," she said simply. "I'd like to make your positions permanent. Are you interested?" "Yes," they said in unison, then laughed. Rachel smiled. "Good. Then welcome to the team, officially." She slid an envelope across the desk to Malik. "And this is your completed scholarship application. Everything except the essay, that part's on you." Malik took the envelope with trembling hands. "You've got 4 weeks to write it and submit," Rachel said. "Take your time. Make it honest. Tell them who you are, and why this matters." That night, Malik sat at the kitchen table with a blank piece of paper in front of him and a pen in his hand. Why does this matter? He thought about Dorothy on her porch, about his mother's swollen feet and rationed medication, about Imani reading by the light of a single lamp because they couldn't afford to turn on more, and he began to write. The next 6 weeks were a study in patience. Malik submitted his scholarship application on a gray October morning, his hands shaking as he dropped the envelope in the mail. Rose had read his essay 3 times, crying each time, insisting it was perfect. Patterson had reviewed it too, making only small suggestions about structure. Now there was nothing to do but wait and work. Malik threw himself into his job with renewed focus. He arrived early, stayed late, volunteered for extra projects. Patterson started giving him more responsibility, reviewing rote efficiency, suggesting optimization improvements, even sitting in on client meetings. "You've got good instincts," Patterson told him, after Malik identified a recurring bottleneck in their east side routes. "Most people look at data and see numbers, you see patterns." The compliment settled warmly in Malik's chest, fighting against the constant whisper of doubt that said he didn't really belong here. Rose, meanwhile, had become indispensable. She'd reorganized the entire filing system, implemented a new scheduling protocol that saved hours each week, and had a way of handling difficult clients that turned frustration into cooperation. Rachel had already given her a raise. "Your mama's running this place," Barbara joked to Malik one afternoon. "Give her 6 months, and she'll probably be running the whole company." At home, things were different too. The electricity bill got paid on time. Rose bought groceries without counting pennies. Mamani got new shoes that actually fit, small things, but they felt like miracles. Still, Malik couldn't shake the anxiety that hummed beneath everything. The scholarship application sat out there somewhere, being read by people he'd never met, people who would decide whether he was worthy of a chance at something more. School had started again, his junior year at the local high school. His classes felt simultaneously easier and harder. Easier because he could concentrate now, without the constant worry about money. Harder because he was exhausted, balancing school and work, and the weight of possibility. His teachers noticed the change in him. Mr. Williams, his English teacher, pulled him aside one day. "Jefferson, your last 3 essays have been exceptional." "What happened?" Malik shrugged. "Just trying harder, I guess." "Well, keep it up. You've got college-level work here. Don't waste it." College. The word felt both impossibly close and impossibly far away. 7 weeks after submitting his application, Malik was helping Patterson review November's route schedules when Barbara appeared in the doorway, holding a large envelope. "Malik, this just came for you. Certified mail." His heart stopped. The envelope bore the Hayes Family Foundation seal. Patterson saw his face. "Go on, take a break. Use the conference room if you need privacy." Malik walked to the conference room on legs that didn't feel like his own. He sat down, staring at the envelope. Rose appeared in the doorway. Barbara must have called her. She slipped in quietly and sat beside him, taking his hand. "Want me to open it?" she asked. He shook his head. His fingers trembled as he broke the seal. Inside was a letter, printed on heavy cream paper. "Dear Mr. Jefferson, on behalf of the Hayes Family Foundation Selection Committee, it is my pleasure to inform you that you have been selected as a scholarship recipient for the academic year." The words blurred. Rose's hand flew to her mouth. "Baby, I got it," Malik whispered. Then louder, "I got it, Mama. I got it." He kept reading, the words spilling over each other in his mind. Full tuition to Brentwood Preparatory Academy. Annual stipend for books and supplies, transportation assistance, academic mentoring and college counseling. Renewable for up to 4 years contingent on academic performance and community engagement. There was more details about orientation, required meetings, summer programs. But Malik couldn't process any of it, because Rose had pulled him into a hug so tight he couldn't breathe, and she was crying, and he realized he was crying too. Patterson appeared in the doorway, took one look at their faces, and smiled. "I'll take that as good news." He got it. Rose managed through her tears. He got the scholarship. Word spread through the office within minutes. Barbara brought sparkling cider. Rachel appeared, her professional composure cracking into genuine joy. "I knew they'd see what I saw," she said, squeezing Malik's shoulder. But then Rachel pulled an additional envelope from her jacket pocket, this one smaller. "There's one more thing," she said quietly, glancing at Rose. "The foundation received a request from someone else. Someone who suggested that if there's a scholarship recipient with a younger sibling showing academic promise, perhaps that sibling should be considered for the elementary program." Rose's eyes widened. What are you saying? Dorothy called the foundation directly. Rachel explained. She made quite a case for Imani, said any little girl who teaches herself to read from library discards deserves the same chance as her brother. Rachel held out the envelope. The committee agreed, pending a brief assessment, just to confirm grade level and learning style. Imani has been accepted to Brentwood Elementary, same campus, same support system. Rose couldn't speak, she just shook her head in disbelief, tears streaming down her face. Malik stared at the envelope. Both of us? Both of you, Rachel confirmed. You'll start in January after the winter break. That gives you both a few months to prepare, finish this semester, and get ready for the transition. Malik thought of Imani sitting at the kitchen table with her dried-up markers and second-hand books, her bright eyes always hungry for more. He thought of how she'd asked, "Are we going to be okay now? Can I call her?" he asked. "Can I tell her?" Rachel smiled. "I think she deserves to hear it from you." Malik borrowed Barbara's office phone, his hands shaking as he dialed the neighbor who watched Imani after school. "Hi Mrs. Chen, can I talk to Imani?" A pause, then his sister's voice. "Malik, did something happen? Are you okay?" "Yeah, Squirt, I'm better than okay." He took a breath. "How would you feel about going to a new school? A really good one. With me. With you." Her voice pitched higher. "Really? Really, you got a scholarship, Imani. You're going to Brentwood." The squeal that came through the phone made everyone in the office laugh. Malik could hear her jumping, could picture her dancing around Mrs. Chen's living room. "Does mommy know?" "She's right here, and she's crying happy tears." "Can I tell Mrs. Chen? Can I tell everybody?" "You can tell the whole world, baby girl." After he hung up, Malik sat in the quiet of Barbara's office for a moment, letting it all sink in. 6 months ago he'd been a kid on a bike, chasing delivery windows, watching his family struggle with no end in sight. Now he was holding a scholarship letter. His mother had a career, his sister had a future, all because he'd stopped to help someone who needed it. The weeks between November and January moved like a dream, or maybe like those moments just before waking, when reality and possibility blur together into something that feels both fragile and solid at once. Malik finished his fall semester at his old school with grades that surprised even him. 3 A's and 2 B's, the best he'd ever done. His teachers wrote glowing recommendations for his Brentwood transfer file, though some seemed confused about how a kid who'd been quietly struggling had suddenly transformed into a focused student. Mr. Williams said it best, "Success isn't about intelligence, Jefferson. It's about having the space to use it." During those weeks, Malik also attended orientation sessions at Brentwood. The campus was overwhelming. Old brick buildings mixed with modern facilities, sprawling lawns, a library that was bigger than his entire apartment building. The first time he walked through those gates, his stomach twisted with a familiar anxiety. "I don't belong here." But then he'd see Imani beside him, her eyes wide with wonder, her hand gripping his tightly, and he'd remember they were building this belonging brick by brick. The student ambassador assigned to Malik was a senior named Chris, tall, confident, white, with an easy smile that somehow didn't feel fake. "I'm not going to lie to you," Chris said as they walked the campus. "You're going to feel out of place at first. Most of these kids have been here since kindergarten. Their parents went here. Their grandparents donated buildings. That's supposed to make me feel better?" Malik asked dryly. Chris laughed. "No, but here's the thing, about 20% of students here are on scholarship. Different backgrounds, different stories, and we look out for each other. You're not alone in this." He pointed to a group of students studying under a tree. "See them? That's the Opportunity Scholars Study Group. Meets twice a week. I'll introduce you when school starts." "You're a scholarship kid?" Malik asked, surprised. "4th-generation military family, single mom, 3 younger siblings." Chris said matter-of-factly, "Got here the same way you did. Someone believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Now I'm headed to Georgetown next fall." He looked at Malik. "This place will challenge you. It'll make you question yourself, but if you let it, it'll also show you what you're capable of." Meanwhile, Rose was navigating her own transformation. Rachel had promoted her to administrative coordinator, a position that came with a small office and direct reports. Rose, who'd spent years taking orders, was now giving them, kindly but firmly. "You're a natural leader," Rachel told her during a performance review. "You see what needs to be done, and you make it happen. That's rare." But with the promotion came new pressures. Rose was supervising people with college degrees, people who'd never struggled to pay rent or skipped meals so their kids could eat. Sometimes she felt like an imposter, like any moment someone would realize she didn't have the credentials for this. "You know what your credential is," Barbara told her one afternoon, catching Rose's moment of doubt. "You raised 2 kids on nothing and didn't break. You managed impossible budgets for years. You know how to solve problems with limited resources, and honey, that's the most valuable skill in any business." Rachel also connected Rose with Dorothy, suggesting they have coffee. The 2 women met on a Saturday morning at a small cafe, and within minutes, they were talking like old friends. "You raised a remarkable young man," Dorothy said. "He saw an old woman struggling, and didn't look away. That doesn't happen by accident." Rose's eyes misted. "I just tried to teach him to be decent, to help when he could." "You taught him more than that," Dorothy said firmly. "You taught him that his circumstances don't define his character. And now look what's happening. He's not just receiving help, he's going to be in a position to give it. That's legacy, Rose. That's what matters." The 2 women became unlikely friends, Dorothy sharing stories of her late husband, her years of struggle, her determination to reclaim her family home. Rose sharing her own journey, the years of single motherhood, the constant fear that she wasn't doing enough. "We're both builders," Dorothy said. "We just build with different materials." January arrived cold and bright. The first day at Brentwood came with a mix of terror and determination. Malik stood in front of his closet, staring at the uniform: navy blazer, white shirt, khaki pants, striped tie. Rose had to help him with the tie 3 times before he got it right. "You look so grown," she said, her voice catching. Imani emerged from her room in her uniform, a plaid jumper, white blouse, knee socks. She twirled, grinning. "Do I look like a Brentwood girl?" "You look perfect," Malik said, though his stomach was churning. The drive to school was quiet. Rose had borrowed Dorothy's car. Dorothy had insisted, saying she wasn't using it much anyway. As they pulled up to the campus, Malik saw crowds of students, all moving with easy familiarity, all seeming to know exactly where they belonged. "You've got this," Rose said, squeezing Malik's hand. Then to Imani, "And you little lady are going to make so many friends." Imani skipped toward the elementary building with barely a backward glance, her natural confidence undimmed. Malik envied her that. He walked toward the main building, clutching his schedule, trying not to look as lost as he felt. Chris appeared beside him, clapping him on the shoulder. "Come on, I'll walk you to first period, and lunch is 4th period. Meet me in the cafeteria. I'll introduce you to the group." The morning was a blur. Advanced English with Miss Chen, a different Miss Chen, no relation to his neighbor, where they were discussing Fitzgerald. AP US History, where the teacher assumed everyone knew the difference between Federalists and Anti-Federalists. Pre-calculus, where Malik realized with relief that he was actually ahead of the curve, thanks to the tutoring videos he'd watched late at night. By lunch he was exhausted. Chris led him to a table where 5 other students sat, mixed races, mixed backgrounds, all with the same slightly guarded expression Malik recognized from the mirror. "This is Malik," Chris announced. Sophomore, came in on the Hayes Foundation scholarship. A black girl with short natural hair and sharp eyes looked up. "Hayes, you're the one Dorothy Hayes called the foundation about personally." Malik blinked. "How do you know that?" "Because Dorothy Hayes is my mentor," the girl said, smiling now. "She's been working with the foundation for years, but she's never called them directly about a candidate before. You must have made quite an impression." "I'm Jasmine, by the way, Junior." "I'm Marcus," said a Latino kid with glasses, also Junior. "Word of advice, don't let these rich kids make you feel small. Half of them are coasting on their parents' money. You earned your spot here," a quiet Asian girl named Lily added. "And if you need help with anything, classes, navigating the social stuff, whatever, we've got your back." That's what we do. For the first time all day, Malik felt like he could breathe. The next few weeks were an adjustment period. The academics were rigorous, more reading, more writing, higher expectations than Malik had faced before. But he discovered something surprising when he had time to actually do the work, when he wasn't exhausted from delivery runs or worried about money. He was good at this, really good. His English teacher returned his first essay with a comment that made him read it twice. "This is sophisticated analysis. Have you considered the advanced literature track?" His history teacher pulled him aside after class. "Jefferson, you made a connection between Reconstruction economics and modern urban policy that I hadn't considered. Where'd you learn to think like that?" "I lived it, sir," Malik said simply. But there were challenges too. In the second week, a group of boys in his history class made comments just loud enough for him to hear. "Affirmative action admit, probably here for the sports program. I bet he's gone by spring." Malik felt his jaw tighten, his hands curl into fists. He'd dealt with worse on the streets, but somehow this cut deeper because part of him worried they were right, that he didn't belong, that he was just a charity case. That afternoon, he found Chris. "How do you deal with it? The comments, the looks, the people who think you're only here because of quotas." Chris considered this. "I used to let it eat at me. Then I realized something. They're scared of you." "Scared of me?" "Yeah, because you're proof that their advantages aren't everything. That someone from outside their bubble can compete with them, can beat them. That threatens their entire worldview." Chris leaned back. "So I stopped trying to prove I belonged, and just focused on doing the work. Eventually the work speaks for itself." Malik took that advice to heart. When those boys made comments, he ignored them and scored higher on the next test. When he felt out of place at a school assembly, he sat with Jasmine and Marcus and Lily and remembered he wasn't alone. When the academics got overwhelming, he stayed late in the library, asked questions, refused to fall behind. By March something had shifted. Teachers knew his name in a good way. He'd joined the debate club, Jasmine's suggestion, and discovered he was good at building arguments. His grades were solid, his confidence growing, but the biggest change came from an unexpected place. One afternoon Patterson called him at work. "Malik still worked 3 afternoons a week at Hayes Logistics. I've got a problem and I think you can help. We've got a new route optimization project for the East Side distribution, complex demographics, lots of variables. I want you to take a crack at analyzing it." "Me? That's usually senior analyst work." "Yeah, well, you've been doing junior analyst work for months now. Time to see what you can handle." Malik spent the next 2 weeks buried in data, census information, traffic patterns, delivery windows, client locations. He built models, tested scenarios, refined his approach. It was the kind of deep problem solving that made hours disappear. When he presented his findings to Patterson and the logistics team, his hands shook, but his data was solid, his recommendations clear. Patterson studied the presentation, then looked at Rachel, who was sitting in on the meeting. "This would save us approximately 12 hours per week in drive time and cut fuel costs by about 15%. Rachel smiled. "Implement it." She turned to Malik. "That was professional level work. Really impressive." After the meeting, Patterson pulled Malik aside. "You know what you just did? You proved you can see the big picture and solve real problems. That's the difference between having a job and building a career." That night Malik called Victor Green, the mentor from the foundation who'd checked in with him monthly, as promised. "I think I'm starting to understand what you meant," Malik said, "about success being more than just showing up." Victor's warm laugh came through the phone. "Took me a lot longer to figure that out. You're ahead of the curve, young man, so what's next?" "Next? Yeah, you've stabilized. You're succeeding academically, you're excelling at work. Now what? What's the bigger goal?" Malik hadn't thought about it in those terms. He'd been so focused on surviving each day, each challenge, that he hadn't looked beyond the immediate horizon. "I don't know," he admitted. "That's okay," Victor said, "but start thinking about it, because people like us, we don't get to just succeed for ourselves. We've got a responsibility to pull others up behind us. So think about what that looks like for you." The conversation stayed with Malik over the following weeks. He watched Imani thrive at Brentwood Elementary, making friends, bringing home artwork and stories about science experiments. He saw Rose growing more confident at work, her suggestions now sought out by Rachel and the senior staff. He thought about Dorothy, still calling him every few weeks to check in, to share stories, to remind him where he'd come from. and he started to understand this wasn't just about him escaping poverty, it was about changing what was possible for others. In late April, Rachel called Malik into her office with an unusual request. "I want to run something by you," she said, gesturing for him to sit. "The Hayes Foundation is launching a mentorship program for at-risk youth kids, aging out of foster care, kids from underserved communities, kids who need what you needed 18 months ago." Malik nodded slowly. "We need peer mentors," Rachel continued. "Young people who've been through similar experiences and can speak authentically to what these kids are facing. We're not asking you to be a counselor or a teacher, just someone who shows up, shares their story, and proves that there's a path forward." She paused, watching his reaction. "I know it's a lot to ask. You're already balancing school and work, but Victor suggested you specifically. He said you have a gift for connecting with people." Malik thought about the day he'd helped Dorothy, about how one moment of connection had changed everything, about Chris welcoming him to Brentwood, Jasmine including him at lunch, Patterson giving him real responsibility. "What would I have to do? Meet with a small group of students once a week, share your story, answer questions, maybe help them navigate applications for the scholarship program. It's 2 hours a week, and we'd count it as part of your work hours, so it wouldn't add to your load." Malik considered this. Part of him wanted to say no, he was stretched thin already, still adjusting, still proving himself. But another part, the part that remembered being invisible and hopeless, knew he had to say yes. "Okay," he said. "I'm in." The first session was held on a Saturday morning in May, at a community center in his old neighborhood. Malik stood in a classroom with 15 teenagers, ages 14 to 18, all of them carrying the same wary hunger he remembered from the mirror. Victor stood beside him, offering quiet support. Rachel sat in the back, observing, but this was Malik's moment. "My name is Malik Jefferson," he began, his voice steadier than he felt. 18 months ago, I was delivering groceries on a bike, wondering if I'd ever be anything more than that. I lived in a house 3 blocks from here. My mom worked 2 jobs and still couldn't make rent. My little sister wore shoes that were too big because we couldn't afford to buy new ones every time she grew." He saw recognition in their faces, the understanding of people who'd lived similar truths. "I'm not here to tell you I'm special, or that I did something amazing. I'm here to tell you that I made one choice. I stopped to help someone who needed it, even though it cost me something. And that choice opened a door I didn't even know existed." He told them about Dorothy, about the scholarship, about Brentwood and Hayes logistics. He didn't sugarcoat it. He talked about the fear, the moments of doubt, the comments from privileged kids who thought he didn't belong. "But here's what I learned," he said. "Belonging isn't something you're given, it's something you build, one choice at a time, one day at a time, and you don't have to do it alone." He introduced the scholarship program, explained the application process, answered questions. Some kids were skeptical, they'd heard promises before. Others were cautiously hopeful. A few seemed hungry for any lifeline. After the session, a girl approached him, maybe 15, with box braids and eyes that had seen too much too soon. "Do you really think someone like me can make it?" she asked quietly. Malik looked at her and saw himself. "I think if you want it bad enough to work for it, yeah, absolutely. What if I mess up? Then you learn from it, and keep going. That's what I did, that's what we all do." She nodded slowly, then held out her hand. "I'm Destiny, good to meet you Destiny. I'll see you next week." "Yeah," she said, something like hope flickering in her expression. "I'll be here." Over the next few months, the mentorship program became one of the most important parts of Malik's week. He watched kids who'd been invisible start to believe they could be seen. He helped Destiny with her scholarship application, walked another kid named James through the Brentwood admissions process, talked a girl named Maria through her fear of not being smart enough. "You're good at this," Victor told him after one session. "You meet them where they are. You don't talk down, you don't oversimplify, you just show them it's possible." "Someone did that for me," Malik said. "Feels like the least I can do." But the mentorship program wasn't without challenges. In July, one of his mentees, a 16-year-old named Deshaun, stopped showing up. Malik tried calling, got no answer. He asked around and learned that Deshaun's foster placement had fallen through, and he'd been moved to a group home across town. Malik felt the familiar weight of helplessness. What was the point of offering hope if the system kept crushing it? He called Victor, frustrated. How do we help kids when everything's working against them? We don't save everyone, Victor said gently. We can't, but we show up for the ones we can reach. And sometimes, showing up is enough to plant a seed that grows later, when they're ready. That's not very satisfying. No, Victor agreed. It's not, but it's real, and it's still worth doing. Malik thought about that conversation for days. Then he called Deshawn's caseworker, explained who he was, asked if there was any way to help. The caseworker was surprised but appreciative. Most mentors gave up when kids moved placements. I can arrange a visit if you want, she said. Group homes usually allow approved mentors. The next Saturday, Malik took the bus across town to the group home. Deshawn was surprised to see him. Why'd you come? He asked, defensive. Because I said I'd show up for you, Malik said simply, and I meant it. They sat on the steps of the group home, not saying much, but Deshawn agreed to stay in touch, to keep working on his application, to believe that maybe things could get better. Nobody usually keeps their promises, Deshawn said as Malik was leaving. I'm not nobody, Malik replied. As summer turned to fall, Malik entered his senior year at Brentwood. The school that had once felt foreign now felt familiar. He knew the hallways, the teachers, the rhythms of academic life. He'd been elected to student government, not because of some popularity contest, but because his peers respected his voice. His college applications were in progress. Victor and Rachel were both helping him navigate the process. His grades were strong, his test scores solid, his essays honest and compelling. But more than that, he had something that 18 months ago seemed impossible. He had options. One afternoon in October, as he was reviewing logistics reports at Hayes, Rachel called him into her office. This time, Dorothy was there too, sitting in one of the chairs with her cane leaning against the desk. We wanted to talk to you about something, Rachel said. Dorothy smiled at him. Do you remember the day you helped me on my porch? Yes, ma'am. I've been thinking about that day a lot lately, about how one moment of kindness changed everything, not just for you, but for me, for Rachel, for your family, for all those kids you're mentoring now. She paused. That's the power of what you did, Malik. You created ripples. Rachel leaned forward. The foundation is expanding. We're creating a new initiative specifically focused on what you're doing. Peer mentoring, connecting kids to opportunities, building pathways out of poverty, and we want you to be the face of it. Malik blinked. The face of it. Your story, Rachel explained. Your journey. We want to use it to inspire donors, to show people what's possible when we invest in young people. And when you graduate college, there's a position waiting for you here, Director of Youth Mentorship. You'd build the program, hire mentors, develop curriculum, turn what you've been doing into something sustainable. I'm only 17, Malik protested. And by the time you graduate college, you'll be 21 or 22, Rachel countered. With 4 years of mentorship experience, a degree and a story that proves you know what you're talking about. That's not too young. That's exactly right. Dorothy reached over and patted his hand. You don't have to decide now, but I want you to know, you changed my life that day on the porch, and now you have a chance to change hundreds of other lives, maybe thousands. That's legacy, Malik. That's what matters. That night, Malik sat with his mother and Amani at the dinner table, a real dinner table now, in a larger apartment they'd moved into 6 months ago. Rose had cooked a meal that didn't come from a food bank. Amani was working on homework from her 4th grade advanced reading class. Mama, Malik said, they offered me a job, after college, a real career. Rose put down her fork. Tell me. He explained the offer, the vision, the opportunity. Rose listened, her eyes growing bright. Baby, do you remember when you were 10 years old, and you asked me if things would ever get better? Malik nodded. I told you I didn't know, but I told you to keep being good, keep doing right, and maybe the world would notice. Her voice caught. The world noticed, Malik, and now you get to help it notice other kids like you. Amani piped up. Are you going to be famous? Malik laughed. No, Squirt, I'm going to help people. That's better than famous. Can I help too? He looked at his little sister, thriving now, confident, full of dreams that were finally possible. Yeah, he said. When you're older you can help too. We'll do it together. The 1-year anniversary of Malik's first day at Brentwood fell on a mild January afternoon. The foundation decided to mark the occasion with a small celebration. Nothing fancy, just the people who'd been part of the journey. They gathered at Dorothy's house, on the porch that had started it all. The porch was fully restored now, painted a cheerful yellow, with new railings and a swing that creaked gently in the breeze. Dorothy presided over the gathering like a queen, healthy and strong, her eyes bright with pride. Rachel stood beside her mother, one arm around her shoulders. Rose and Barbara were deep in conversation, trading stories and laughter. Patterson was talking shop with Victor, both of them gesturing animatedly. Amani played with the children of other Hayes employees, her joy infectious. Malik stood at the edge of the porch, watching it all, feeling the weight of gratitude and possibility. The mentees from his program had been invited too: Destiny, James, Maria, even Deshawn, who'd managed to stay connected despite the chaos of his placement situation. They clustered together, still slightly awed by the surroundings, but beginning to believe they belonged in spaces like this. Chris, home from Georgetown for the weekend, appeared beside Malik. "How's it feel?" "Surreal," Malik admitted. "Like I'm going to wake up and be back on my bike, chasing deliveries." "Nah," Chris said. "This is real. You built this, all of it." Rachel called everyone together, raising a glass of sparkling cider. "I want to say something," she began. 18 months ago, my mother called me and told me about a young man who'd stopped to help her when he had every reason to keep going. A young man who chose kindness over convenience, who put someone else's need before his own." She looked at Malik. "That choice didn't just change my mother's day. It didn't just change your life. It started something bigger, a reminder that one person's compassion can create waves that reach farther than we can imagine." She gestured to the group, the mentees, the staff, the family. "Everyone here is proof of that. Proof that when we invest in people, when we believe in them, when we create opportunities and offer support, incredible things happen." Dorothy stood, leaning on her cane, her voice still strong. "I'm an old woman. I've seen a lot of years, a lot of changes, and I can tell you this: the world is full of people who walk past those who need help, full of people who are too busy, too tired, too focused on their own struggles to stop." She looked directly at Malik. "But every once in a while, someone stops, someone sees, someone acts. And when that happens, when compassion meets opportunity, the whole world shifts just a little bit." She raised her glass, "To Malik Jefferson, who reminded me that goodness still exists, and who's going to spend his life making sure other kids get the chances they deserve." Everyone raised their glasses. "To Malik." Malik felt his throat tighten. He looked around at these people, this unlikely family built from a single moment of kindness, and felt the full weight of how far they'd all come. Later, as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, Destiny approached him. "I got my acceptance letter," she said quietly. "I'm starting at Brentwood next fall, full scholarship." Malik's face broke into a grin. "Destiny, that's amazing. I wouldn't have applied if you hadn't believed I could do it," she said. "So thank you for not giving up on me." "I'm not going to lie to you," Malik said, echoing what Chris had told him. "It's going to be hard. You're going to want to quit. You're going to feel like you don't belong. But I will belong," Destiny said firmly, "because I'm going to build that belonging, one day at a time, just like you showed me." After she walked away, Rose came to stand beside her son. "You know what your father would say if he could see you now?" she asked softly. Malik had been 5 when his father died. He barely remembered him. What would he say? He'd say you turned out better than he ever dreamed, that you took the worst circumstances and built something beautiful, that you're proof that kindness isn't weakness, it's the strongest thing there is. She took his hand. "I'm so proud of you, baby, not because of the scholarship, or the job or any of that, but because you stayed good. Despite everything, you stayed good. And that's the hardest thing to do in this world." As darkness fell and the celebration continued, Malik found himself back on the porch steps, the same spot where he'd first met Dorothy, where this entire journey had begun. He thought about that day, about the choice he'd made, about how easily he could have kept riding,
could have prioritized his delivery, could have decided that someone else's problem wasn't his concern. But he'd stopped, and that stop had changed everything. He thought about the college applications waiting for decisions. He'd applied to 10 schools, all of them possibilities he'd never dared imagine before. He thought about the job offer from Rachel, about the mentorship program, about kids like Destiny, who were just beginning their own journeys. He thought about Dorothy's words, "That's legacy, that's what matters." And he understood, finally, what she meant. Legacy wasn't about being perfect. It wasn't about never struggling or always having the answers. Legacy was about what you did when you had the chance to help someone. It was about the doors you opened for others, after someone opened a door for you. It was about building bridges, one plank at a time, so that others could cross from hopelessness to possibility. Victor appeared beside him, settling onto the step with a satisfied sigh. "You know what the best part of mentoring you has been?" Victor asked. "What?" "Watching you realize you're not just receiving help anymore, you're giving it. You've gone from being saved to being the one doing the saving. That's the whole point." Malik nodded slowly. "I'm starting to see that." "Good." Victor stood, offering Malik his hand to pull him up, "because there are a lot more kids who need what you have to offer. A lot more porches that need building. You ready for that?" Malik looked back through the window at the gathering, at Rose laughing with Barbara, at Imani playing with younger kids, at Dorothy holding court in her restored home, at the mentees clustered together, no longer alone, at Rachel and Patterson discussing plans for the future, all of it connected by invisible threads of kindness that had somehow woven themselves into something stronger than any of them could have built alone. "Yeah," Malik said, his voice firm with conviction. "I'm ready," because he'd learned the most important lesson of all, that kindness wasn't weakness, that helping someone wasn't losing something, it was gaining everything. That sometimes, the smallest acts, catching a falling board, staying an extra hour, choosing someone else's need over your own, could change not just one life, but dozens, hundreds, maybe more. And as Malik Jefferson walked back into that warm, bright house filled with people who'd become family, he carried with him a truth that would guide the rest of his life. Success isn't measured by what you achieve for yourself, it's measured by how many people you help achieve their own dreams. The story that began on a hot summer day with a falling board and an elderly woman's struggle didn't end that night. It was just beginning, and it would continue through every kid Malik mentored, every door he opened, every life he touched, rippling outward in ways he couldn't yet imagine, changing the world one act of kindness at a time. Because that's what happens when compassion meets opportunity. That's what happens when someone chooses to stop and help. That's what happens when one person decides that another person's life matters. The porch that Dorothy's father had built with his bare hands, that Dorothy had fought to restore, that Malik had helped save, now stood as a symbol of something greater than wood and nails. It stood as proof that we build our legacies not with grand gestures, but with small choices made in moments when no one is watching. And those choices, made with care and carried forward with love, can change everything.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.